Hello, I'm Jake, 37 years old. I had an amazing 3-year marriage with Leah, who's 30. We were deeply in love and inseparable, like two peas in a pod. But everything crumbled when I discovered Leah cheated on me. As I write this, my heart is heavy, and I hope sharing my story brings some consolation. A few years ago, at a noisy street festival in our city, fate seemed to play a role. Leah and I kept crossing paths in the crowd. The last time at the festival, we laughed, realizing we'd met at least 6 times that day. Believing in the universe's power to guide us, I saw this as a message from fate. The green-eyed blonde I often saw felt familiar, so I wanted to talk to her. Our communication was easy, and every part of her personality seemed perfect. It dawned on me during the conversation that she recently became a physics professor at our local state college. This was significant because her appearance didn't fit the stereotypical professor image. With her slim build and youthful complexion, it was easy to mistake her for a recent college graduate. Initially, I didn't think about dating Leah, just saw her as a brilliant friend who occasionally intimidated me with her genius. But as we spent more time together, I realized I had fallen deeply in love with her. She valued our communication and grew fond of me. About 2 months after our first meeting, she started sharing a bed with me, seeking comfort and advice when she had issues with her then boyfriend. Over time, our relationship became more closeness. I knew it was wrong, but I allowed it because she assured me she was about to end her relationship with her boyfriend. After a few weeks of our newfound closeness, she broke up with him, explaining it was due to a lack of intellectual compatibility and different personalities. Though her reasons disturbed me, I felt relieved we were now together, unaware I had fallen into a trap. We continued dating for 9 months and eventually got married. I was genuinely and passionately in love with her. We envisioned growing old together. Before the wedding, Leah and I signed a contract to start a family early. I loved children and didn't want to wait until 40 to be a father. I wanted to spend ample time with my children, witnessing their growth and giving them the fatherly love I missed so much. In the beginning, our plan looked perfect, but around a year after the wedding, we faced a heart-wrenching reality. Leah couldn't get pregnant in our 2nd year of marriage, causing even more sadness for me. We explored every option, ran many tests to figure out why Leah couldn't conceive, but surprisingly, all results came back normal. I even had several examinations myself, hoping to find any underlying problems, but each time, I received positive results. Unlike Leah, who stayed completely calm, I couldn't shake a growing unease. My dream of starting a family in our 2nd year didn't happen, and honestly, it weighed heavily on my heart, causing significant anxiety. Traditionally, women are believed to carry the longing for children, but in our case, Leah seemed surprisingly unfazed by our inability to conceive. She always reassured me, saying, "Don't worry, the time will come when we're destined to have a child," and went back to her daily routine easily. Sometimes, I had to avoid mentioning the topic because it made her react, making me feel like I was exaggerating or blaming her for our difficulties. So, I chose not to discuss it further, respecting her point of view. I'm aware that the details I'm about to share are deeply personal, but expressing these thoughts is crucial to complete my story. Despite our inability to have a child, I didn't let this failure cast a shadow on our marriage. On the contrary, I saw it as an opportunity to strengthen our bond and cherish the precious moments with Leah before children entered the picture. Yet over time, I couldn't help but notice changes in her behavior. It started feeling like we were just strangers living under the same roof. I worked at a construction site and often didn't have the chance to personally meet most of my colleagues and clients. Surprisingly, Leah seemed to know a lot about them, their names, appearance, behavior, and attitudes. We got into the habit of sharing the smallest details of our working days. Similarly, I found myself well informed about the students in her courses, their names, appearance, and even the problems they faced. I knew about difficult and wonderful students, all thanks to Leah sharing stories about her students and her working days. But something changed, and you might want to know how it happened. Let me explain. Suddenly, our regular conversations stopped, and I was puzzled. What could have caused such a change? Initially, I thought she was just having a hard day, but bad days turned into weeks, and the weeks gradually turned into months. We found ourselves in a state of prolonged absence, missing the connection we had before. When I tried to start a conversation, Leah either said she was busy or promised we would talk later, which never happened. As if that wasn't enough, our closeness life suffered too. It got to the point where I begged her for even the simplest touch, but no matter how hard I tried, she wouldn't agree. On the contrary, she was offended and ran out of the bedroom. Every time she did that, it felt like a blow to my self-esteem, and my heart was shattered. It was hard not to feel that she was depriving me of my husband's rights, and it seemed like she was deliberately avoiding the possibility of having a child. Despite my deep love for her, I became more patient, trying to downplay the problem. Strangely enough, I continued to believe that eventually she would realize her actions were pushing us apart and would try to fix the situation. But that hope collapsed as she continued to distance herself, and our relationship deteriorated to the point where we became just neighbors, harboring enmity towards each other. Our once lively conversations went through a tough time, and we ended up in a constant state of disagreement. Maybe I should have investigated to understand why she changed suddenly, but blinded by love, I was driven by the sole desire to save our relationship. In desperation, I made a compromised decision to show my willingness to mend things, hoping it would make a difference. In a serious talk with Leah, I told her that having a child or not didn't matter to me anymore. I assured her that we could spend our lives together without it. Surprisingly, this statement seemed to uplift her for a whole week. I noticed slight changes in Leah's behavior as our closeness gradually resumed, even if it felt somewhat forced. I welcomed the temporary relief from the emotional distance, but just as abruptly as it started, a week later, she returned to her cold and distant demeanor. It seemed the warmth and happiness she showed were just a facade, a temporary mask she put on before shedding it off. This constant cycle of fluctuating emotions deeply disappointed me. The impact of these experiences affected all aspects of my life, influencing my performance and even my ability to sleep peacefully. I often hear couples living under the same roof say they can go for days without communicating meaningfully, and I wonder how they manage it in my situation. The lack of communication significantly affected my mental state, while Leah seemed to remain calm. She came home cheerful, cooked her own food, and then immersed herself in books and a laptop for the rest of the evening. When tiredness finally took over, she went to bed without a word. Due to the stark contrast between our experiences, I felt increasingly isolated and abandoned. While my loneliness worsened, Leah seemed to distance herself, drowning in her emotional solitude. As the third anniversary of our acquaintance approached, I decided to change things and dedicate a whole week to celebrate. I bought a special gift and planned to take her to a recently opened upscale restaurant in the city. Eagerly, I made all the necessary preparations, even booking a table for us. Throughout the day, I sent her numerous reminders via text, desperately hoping she wouldn't forget our plans. But the evening came, and she didn't show up. Moreover, she didn't come home at all that evening, leaving me devastated and abandoned. To my horror, Leah explained her absence, saying she fell asleep at a colleague's while working on a joint project. It was the final blow that shattered all my hopes. I reached a breaking point, emotionally drained, mentally exhausted, unable to handle the constant shocks. Despite persistent thoughts about Leah's possible infidelity, I chose to approach the situation with understanding, not acknowledging the possibility that she had withdrawn from our relationship. Nevertheless, this incident became a turning point, forcing me to confront the painful reality that had been lurking in the shadows until now. The mere thought that the woman I loved had entered into an affair with someone else left me completely shattered and devastated. After the events of our anniversary week, I made the challenging decision to seek answers. Overwhelmed by doubts and suspicions, I turned to the internet and enlisted the help of a private detective to uncover all the hidden truths about Leah's actions behind my back. While the investigator discreetly tracked her, I tried to distract myself by re-entering the dating world. On those nights when I knew Leah was completely exhausted and asleep, I sought solace in these new encounters. I considered using her fingerprint to unlock the phone and check its contents. After reading many stories about spouses discovering infidelity through their partner's devices, I decided to investigate. I went into various apps, checked her personal and work email, looked at her social media profiles, and carefully examined the contact list for suspicious names and emoticons. Despite spending several minutes on this thorough investigation, I couldn't find any evidence. The next day, still troubled by uncertainty, I asked her for a laptop under the pretext of needing it for a specific task. She readily handed it over, and I carefully examined its contents, desperately hoping to find signs of betrayal. To my surprise, her digital footprint was as clear as a newly fallen snowflake. There was no hint of her betrayal. Moreover, I felt guilty that in my relentless quest for the truth, I had resorted to the services of a private detective. When the weekend passed, I felt the need to confess my growing paranoia to the detective and express a desire for him to stop the investigation. However, I decided to be patient and postpone the conversation until Monday, knowing Leah spends most of her time at home on weekends. Finally, when Monday arrived, I contacted the detective to ask him to stop the investigation. Before I could say a word, they immediately informed me that they had found convincing facts that, in their opinion, I should see firsthand. The mere thought that this discovery happened just a week after hiring them almost stopped my heart. Overwhelmed with anxiety, I embarked on the longest trip of my life, allowing me to sort through numerous thoughts. When I met with the detective, my worst fears materialized. Leah was indeed attracted to another person. My heart broke when I saw pictures of them in a closeness setting, hand in hand, exploring different places together. Unable to contain my emotions, tears flowed down my face. Admittedly, I have always been a sensitive person, so it was difficult for me to realize that Leah betrayed our relationship. The situation was worsened by the fact that the photos captured their trip to a new restaurant I had ordered to celebrate our anniversary, and she never showed up. Additionally, in the pictures, they were in a passionate embrace in Leah's car, further intensifying my suffering. The private detective's findings revealed even sadder details, including instances when Leah and her new companion stayed overnight in hotels together. As the truth unfolded, it became clear that the project Leah actively participated in was none other than the man she held in her arms. It was a real shock to discover that her lover was much younger, likely around 20 years old. During the investigation, it turned out his name is Ryan. He is in the last year of the physics department, and surprisingly, Leah is his teacher. Hearing his name, a wave of recognition swept over me, and my heart sank to an unimaginable depth. Leah often mentioned Ryan in our conversations, praising his exceptional intelligence and academic achievements. She recognized him as one of the most capable students. I was aware of her admiration for people with unique intelligence, but I couldn't imagine she'd betray our relationship by having an affair with her student. A mix of heartache and anger overwhelmed me, leaving fragments after this revelation. Over the past 3+ years, I made countless sacrifices for Leah, so this betrayal was even harder to comprehend. While working together, I did everything to make Leah's life comfortable. I handled most household chores, cooking, cleaning, and grocery shopping. Leah's only task was laundry on weekends. I did everything else. Financially, we agreed on a 70-30 ratio, with most from me. I firmly believed it was my duty to bear more financial responsibility to support her. This decision aimed to ease her financial situation. I thought it natural to offer support and help to a loved one, just as I did with Leah. The most challenging part in our relationship was the lack of support from my mother. Despite her disapproval, I chose to marry Leah, complicating our relationship. Reflecting on the past, I instructed a private detective to monitor Leah's actions. The provided photographs couldn't satisfy my need for concrete evidence, pushing me to seek more accurate proof. My determination to catch them in the act intensified when I returned home. My wounded heart longed to meet Leah, but I resisted temptation. Silence engulfed me, hiding the depth of my pain. The surge of emotions forced me to leave the walls of our broken love urgently. Fear of succumbing to anger and causing misuse led me to collect a few necessary things in the closet. In this chaotic process, I stumbled upon an object that destroyed all remnants of love in my heart: birth control pills. Their presence extinguished any remaining hope. Confused at first, considering our unsuccessful attempts to conceive, I painfully realized Leah had been secretly taking birth control pills, unknowingly depriving us of starting a family. The truth hit me like an inexorable wave, crushing my hopes. Leah was the reason we couldn't conceive. In that heartbreaking moment, I realized how much she deceived me, letting me suffer and doubt our fertility. Unaware, she intentionally took birth control pills. The weight of this exposure crushed me more than the knowledge of her affair with a young man. Immersed in sadness, I clutched the birth control pills, tears streaming down my face, trying to comprehend her betrayal. Gathering strength, I decided to leave the house without saying a word to Leah, informing her I was going to my mom's and would be back on the weekend. It was a ruse, an elaborate plan to see if she would take the bait. That evening, I sought refuge in a hotel, longing for solace and clarity amidst mental and spiritual turmoil. The next day, my private detective passed on crucial information. Leah and her lover were heading to my house. This was the case I had been waiting for. In the grip of intense emotions, including anger and betrayal, I wished for a dramatic face-off with Leah. Inspired by videos where people courageously confronted their unfaithful partners, I decided to follow suit. To capture this pivotal moment, I hired a videographer to document every detail. Unobtrusively joining the videographer, we arrived at my house shortly after Leah and Ryan. Prepared for the scene, I was emotionally charged to confront them. Instead of immediately starting a fight, I chose to wait until they entered the house. After about 15 minutes, I cautiously entered the house with the videographer. Knowing Leah seldom locked the front door, especially if she assumed I wouldn't be there until the weekend, we silently headed to the bedroom. Soft music in the living room masked our approach. Outside the bedroom door, a mix of emotions churned in my stomach. Anticipation and anger surged, prompting me to take swift action. Without hesitation, I stepped forward and forcefully hit the door, shattering the illusion of secrecy concealing their betrayal. In the midst of the chaos, I directed the videographer to film Ryan behind Leah during act in bed. The sight of their betrayal further fueled my anger. In seconds, they hastily gathered their clothes, resembling a stampede of rats seeking cover. As Leah slowly realized the gravity of the situation, her screams and insults filled the air, directed at me. Unable to contain my rage, I grabbed her by the arm and forcibly dragged her out of the house, leaving her defenseless and vulnerable. Her partner, hastily pulling on his pants, managed to escape before further confrontation. The scene was chaotic, filled with violent emotions. Leah's screams reflected the consequences of the revealed truth, drawing neighbors out of their homes. At the moment of realization, Leah understood the severity of her actions and hurriedly disappeared in her car. Without delay, I took action, sending incriminating photos collected by my private detective and video recordings from the videographer to the college where Leah worked. Inspired by the stories I had heard, I anticipated the likely outcome, and events unfolded exactly as expected. The following week, Leah faced the consequences of her actions. She was fired from her college job. Exposed by the revelations, Leah was expelled from college, eliminating her future prospects. Despite threatening messages, I focused on ending the toxic relationship and initiating the divorce process. All I wanted was to rid myself of her forever. Leah returned to our house to pack, but her whereabouts remained unknown to me. After our meeting, I spent the rest of the week looking for divorce lawyers in our neighborhood, preparing for the upcoming trial. It was evident that dissolving the marriage was the only way to move forward and reclaim my life. After a thorough search, I found a suitable divorce lawyer and immediately scheduled a meeting to discuss next steps. With a firm decision, I proceeded with the divorce process. A few days later, I confronted Leah, handing her the divorce papers, officially ending our union. Her reaction was unexpected. Leah was shocked by my decision to divorce her, responding with laughter instead of facing the reality. She claimed marrying me was a favor, asserting my intellectual inferiority. Though hurt, I hid my inner shock behind a smile, not wanting her to see how deeply her rude statements hurt me. In that moment, I saw a side of Leah that I had never seen before, the true extent of her callousness and lack of remorse. This deeply disturbed me. I was even more outraged that she brazenly belittled me and boasted about how lucky I was in my relationship with her. She boldly predicted I'd soon crawl back and beg her to take me back, claiming I couldn't live a month without her. Instead of signing the divorce papers, she took them from my hands, saying she was giving me time to recover. That's how she left, leaving me alone with mixed emotions from her heartless words and actions. I kept my discovery about birth control pills a secret, expecting Leah to admit her dismissal from work for crossing ethical boundaries. Surprisingly, she stayed silent, focusing on convincing me to return. Months passed with persuasion until Leah reluctantly signed the divorce papers, officially ending our marriage. Little did I know this wasn't the end of our story. In our first meeting to sign the divorce papers, Leah acted strong, as if she considered herself the only significant woman. After the divorce, she changed dramatically, bombarding my phone and social media with messages. I had to block her number and cut off our online connection, but even these measures couldn't stop her. Weeks later, Leah appeared on my doorstep, looking unhappy with a tear-stained face. Seeing me, a flood of emotions overwhelmed Leah, forcing her to fall to her knees in tears. She begged me for forgiveness, promising to change beyond recognition. She shared her difficulties without me, claiming she had nowhere to turn and faced the danger of having her car confiscated. Having lost her job and tarnished her reputation, it was increasingly difficult for her to find work elsewhere. My heart broke when I saw her vulnerable state, and I listened to her plaintive pleas. Despite the pain I caused her, I couldn't ignore her suffering. This challenged my resolve, forcing me to face the complexities of forgiveness and compassion. When I saw Leah standing in front of me, anger flared up again. She squandered all her savings on her young student boyfriend, giving him lavish dinners and dressing him in luxurious clothes. Now she stood before me, penniless and desperate. Instinctively, I slammed the door and cut her out of my life, but she persisted, pushing her way forward. When her first requests failed, she resorted to another card. Taking a deep breath, she admitted she had something to tell. Intrigued but still wary, I reluctantly let her talk. When she started talking, the unpleasant truth came out. She had been taking birth control pills for the entire 2 years we were trying to conceive a child. This revelation shocked me and sparked disbelief, mingled with the lingering rage inside. Leah confessed to using birth control pills because she wasn't ready for motherhood back then. However, she now insisted she was prepared and promised to try her best to conceive if I returned. She painted a future with the happy, united family I'd always dreamed of. Despite my doubts, I let her explain after carefully listening to her request. When she finished, I calmly let her know that I was already aware of the birth control pills, capturing a mix of surprise and awareness on her face. Looking directly into Leah's eyes, I honestly shared my feelings. I explained that considering forgiveness for her infidelity was one thing, but the deeper wound she inflicted was beyond healing. It was the feeling of being made a fool of. I noticed she saw my worry about our relationship and my fervent prayers for a solution when it seemed all other options were exhausted. Throughout, she remained silent, letting me suffer in vain and repeatedly uttering her disparaging phrase. It was unpleasant to realize that I thought we were on the same page, working toward a common goal, but her silence deceived me. Reflecting on the situation, I admitted my guilt in letting doubts creep into my consciousness. I should have been more attentive to changes in her behavior, and suspected she knew about our struggle. However, I treated these fears as paranoia. With a heavy heart, I firmly demanded that Leah leave my territory, making it clear that further intrusion would lead to legal consequences. That meeting marked the last time our paths crossed. I've endured mental anguish before, but the level of frustration and devastation this time surpassed anything I've experienced. I had hoped the pain and anger would fade after she finished her career, but it turned out I was still grappling with these emotions. Despite the desire for retribution, nothing could soften the emotional shock that now consumed me. Overcoming the consequences, I realized I had to find the strength because it turned out I had to solve problems alone. 5 years have passed, and I'm happily married. I have a wonderful and loving wife who gave birth to 2 beautiful and intelligent children. My dream of a happy family has come true, and I'm content. Leah entered 2 relationships, both unsuccessful, mostly seen as a toy rather than a wife and mother. Mutual friends inform me that Leah is now working in college, not as a teacher, but responsible for floor cleanliness. In short, she cleans the floors. This smart and beautiful woman chose such a life for herself, and I don't pity her. I'm Alex, a 34-year-old guy. and I've always believed in the importance of relationships. Lisa, my partner, is 32, and we've been together for 7 years. We met during an internship after college, and our connection was legendary among friends. We were the couple others admired for having it all together. Lisa, a vibrant senior marketing executive at a top tech firm, had to go on yearly retreats due to her job, and I never thought much about it. One year, my close friend Mark joined Lisa's company and was excited about his first retreat. Mark and I have been friends since high school, and I trusted him completely. A few days before the retreat, we met for drinks, and he expressed his excitement about being part of the company getaway. We joked about him being my inside man, keeping an eye on Lisa to ensure she didn't have too much fun without me. The retreat lasted 3 days. On the second day, Mark called me hesitantly, saying he saw Lisa spending a lot of time with her boss, Liam. Initially, I dismissed it as work-related, but Mark insisted they seemed too close, often disappearing for hours with a shared secrecy. Curiosity got the better of me, so I decided to surprise Lisa at the resort the next day, coordinating with Mark for updates. Approaching the private beach, I found Lisa and Liam sitting close, their hands intertwined, sharing a closeness moment. It hit me hard. I approached them, trying to keep my composure. Lisa's face turned pale, and Liam looked equally shocked. Without causing a scene, I asked Lisa to join me for a walk. The air was thick with tension as we walked in silence. Finally, Lisa spoke, emphasizing that nothing physical had happened, but admitting they had developed deep, emotional connections. The retreat ended, and so did our relationship. The trust was shattered, and although there was no physical infidelity, the emotional betrayal was just as painful. Months passed, Lisa moved out, and we both tried to heal. Our friends were shocked, and Mark felt guilty for sharing the news, but I was grateful. It was better to know the truth than to live in ignorance. As weeks turned into months, the pain lessened, replaced by a numb acceptance. I immersed myself in work and reconnected with old hobbies to fill the void. One evening, while cleaning a shared storage unit, I found a box of Lisa's old journals and letters. Out of curiosity or a need for closure, I decided to take a peek. Flipping through the pages, I discovered entries from our early days together, revealing hints of doubts and insecurities Lisa had never voiced. A specific entry grabbed my attention. It was from a time when Lisa and I briefly broke up in our 3rd year together. Lisa wrote about meeting someone during that period, someone she felt a deep connection with but decided not to pursue due to our reconciliation. The person she mentioned was Liam. The realization hit me strongly. Their connection wasn't recent. It had roots going back years. The emotional bond they shared during the retreat wasn't just a fleeting moment. It was a rekindling of past emotions. I experienced a mix of emotions: anger, betrayal, sadness, and confusion. Was our entire relationship a deception? Did she always have feelings for Liam? Why didn't she mention this before? I reached out to Mark, my pillar of support throughout this ordeal. Over a drink, I shared my discovery. Mark, always the voice of reason, suggested that perhaps Lisa herself hadn't fully understood her feelings for Liam until they reconnected at the retreat. He reminded me that relationships are intricate, and people often grapple with emotions they don't completely understand. But now I'm at a crossroads. Part of me wants to confront Lisa, seeking answers and closure. Another part wonders if it's better to leave the past behind and move forward. But remember, sometimes the past should remain buried. If you seek closure, confronting her might help. But if you're aiming to move on, it might be best to let it go. It's just challenging to decide. Do I dig deeper, risking opening old wounds? Or do I try to find peace with the unknown? What would you do in my shoes? Relationships are never clear-cut. They're a complex mix of emotions, decisions, and moments that shape us. The pain of betrayal, whether emotional or physical, leaves lasting scars that are difficult to heal.